Hello and welcome in this new OSINT Origins podcast, animated by myself, Sylvain from OSINT-FR.com, co-founder. Today we are very happy to welcome Peter Kleissner, Intelligence X founder and CEO. Hello, Peter.
Hi, thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. Thank you to accept our invitations. So, Peter, could you introduce yourself? Who are you, please?
Absolutely. So, my name is Peter. I am the founder and CEO of Intelligence X. It's a data archive and search engine. I have a very technical background. I'm a programmer, but also entrepreneur. And I like creating new things, developing new things, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. So, what is exactly your professional background, and how and when did you begin OSINT, and what did you done before OSINT?
Yeah, well, so I started my career working for an antivirus company in Vienna. Started as an engineer, but did a lot of reverse engineering as part of my job. That's how I got into security. And then I worked at Deutsche Bank in Frankfurt as a reverse engineer, but also as a security analyst, which again gave me a strong background in cybersecurity. And then I started my first company, Virus Tracker, and which was a botnet monitoring system. It still is and still operates. And then I sold it to the US company Looking Glass. And I stayed there for 3 more years. And then I decided to start Intelligence X. Originally, Intelligence X was not specifically intended for OSINT. It was almost a surprise that there's this OSINT community really loving the tool. And originally, I started it because I saw a market gap in the cybersecurity market where analysts writing reports take way too much time collecting information and not enough time actually analyzing it and delivering their assessment.
Okay, thank you. And so when did you begin to work, and how it was at school, for example, as a cybersecurity guy?
Yeah, well, so I started when I was 18. A lot of things happened at once when I was 18. I got kicked out of school. I went to the Black Hat USA 2009 conference, and I then got prosecuted for it because I created a proof of concept called Stone Bootkit, which was showing how to put a backdoor on TrueCrypt encrypted hard disks without knowing the password. The reason why it worked is because the bootloader was not encrypted and there was space for additional code. And so the Austrian public prosecutor prosecuted me, and there was the full program. There was a police raid at my house. It took 2.5 years. I went on trial, and in the end I got acquitted because I was able to show that it was just a proof of concept and it was not a malicious tool for hacking purposes.
Mm-hmm. And so now Intelix.io, what do you provide? Which kind of services or data do you provide?
Right, so at Intelligence X, we collect anything that is public and that makes sense for our customers. So we started initially collecting paste documents. We started on darknets, on Tor and I2P, but then we broadened it up and now we include public websites and other things such as data leaks and who is data. And so anything that makes sense. And Intelligence X has 2 main use cases. One is to find out if there's data leaked about you or about your customers or employees, and you want to know about that. And the second one is to help in investigations to get additional information. So that can be any kind of investigation. It can be legal investigations or cybersecurity incident handling. And then you want to know more about like an IP address or an email address or a domain. And then you would use our tool to figure out, okay, this IP address is associated maybe with an actor on a forum, or they have an account here. And it gives you context that you would otherwise not have.
Mm-hmm. But so how do you get all this data? Aren't there any difficulties, especially with anti-crawling system protections and CAPTCHAs?
Right. Well, so what we do is we only really collect what is truly public. As soon as there's a capture or any kind of protection, a password or something else, our crawler stops working. It doesn't try to bypass it. And that is actually something that is unique in the industry because there's a lot of companies that do it differently. But because of what we do and how we do it, we decided we only really collect what's public. So if anybody's protecting their website, they can, and our crawler is not going to try to bypass that.
Mm-hmm. And one of the main events in 2020 for the OSINT investigators was the Baseband API closure. So you at Intellix, have you been victim of this event or not?
I wouldn't call ourselves a victim because Baseband is free to do whatever they want. It's their service. They can close the API down or not. We were affected on the data collection side as everybody else. So we only have now a limited view into paste documents, but because we already broadened our data sources, it didn't have any impact on the business. We have many other categories. We have data leaks, who is data, public websites. Recently, we added even patent documents into our collection. So for us, it didn't really have any bad impact on the business.
Okay. And so your company is well known by OSINT investigators who want to have an easy access, to leaked databases. In your opinion, is it legal to make this data available with, for example, GDPR and all this kind of laws?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of opinion, but our lawyers do say that it is that it is fine what we do. But there's a multi-layered answer to this. So one thing that we do is we honor all content removal requests that come in. We handle them within 24 hours. But on the bigger picture, we only collect public data. So we are never the first publisher. If people come to us, and sometimes they do, and say, hey, here's leaked data, whatever, we always reject it every single time. We don't index anything that is non-public, period. So what you're looking at Intelligence X is public data that you can already find elsewhere. And I think that's perfectly fine, indexing public data. Google is doing that, and as soon as we get notified that you're impacted or you claim that your rights are violated, we take action immediately.
And you didn't have some issues with some jurisdictions or, from Europe or maybe from another country for this kind of services?
We didn't run into any problems. So like I said, every single abuse request, content removal request that comes in, we handle and we process it and respond to it. And beyond that, there was no issues at all. We have lawyers that are working on making sure that we are compliant with the law. So we have done a GDPR review. We have a privacy policy. We have a terms of service. We act accordingly, and so far no problems. Yeah.
Okay. So thanks to this data, Intellix was able to publish several OSINT investigations, especially on North Korea and on the Biden email address. Can you tell us more on the Intellix OSINT investigations?
Yeah, so Intelligence X usually we don't do any kinds of investigations. Small exception, in the blog post we published some analysis of things that happen in the public. And for me personally, that is a really cool thing that we are able to do that, because sometimes companies are afraid to touch certain things for political reasons. But because we are an independent company, we are not VC backed. It's 100% shareholder of the company. We can do whatever I want, basically, and that's great. So we published some information about North Korea. We looked at the Biden emails at the time, which was really interesting for me to see, because it was a hot potato. Nobody wanted to touch it in the industry. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to come out and give an assessment or an analysis of it. But we could, and it was fun to do. Like, we weren't able to say whether the email was true or not, but we looked at the metadata, we looked at the email addresses themselves, and were able to determine that, yes, those email addresses were valid and provide some analysis to the public.
Yeah, and so it's pretty interesting because you have a quote on your website from Samuel V Wallson. Can you tell it to our listeners and tell us what do you think about this quote?
Yeah, so the quote goes, paraphrasing, that about 90% of the intelligence comes from open sources and only 10% from clandestine sources. And I would 100% agree with that quote. There's so much data out there that you can use and free tools, and you don't even need paid accounts. So anybody who wants to do open source intelligence, whether it's on a country or on a company or on a person, you can do it immediately. You don't need to hire or pay somebody. You can do it yourselves. You can learn it yourselves. There's great resources out there. And I fully agree that there's so much out in the open, and probably maybe even more than 90% of what you need is out there in the open.
Yeah, and do you have, for example, an example which OSINT investigation have stood out for you? And do you follow some OSINT investigations or?
So personally, I do not follow any specific ones, but I would absolutely tell everybody to follow like some people on Twitter and go to conferences, because that's a great way to learn and get into the field. And that's also true for cybersecurity. If you want to start now, and I would say do it immediately and just go to the conferences or watch the presentations online. You can learn really a lot by the presentations, and you can do it out of the comfort of your home.
Yeah. And so what are your future projects and the future projects of Intellix? If you have some, for sure.
Sure. So on the data collection side, we're already doing pretty good, I would say, and the internal technology is very solid, very mature. So right now, what we are looking at internal at IntelligenceX is how can we deliver the data better to the customer? How can we add value on top of what we provide? So what we're looking at is automating more parts of the analysis. So we're looking into, for example, using AI to write a summary of whatever you see to explain it to you. So that would help people who are not subject matter experts to understand what they're looking at. We're also looking into different ways of the data delivery. So we're looking at presenting it in reports, in PDF reports, scorecards. So for next year, we're looking for that. And personally, I'm working now on the side at the same time on a new project called PeerNet, and I encourage everybody to check it out. It's published on peernet.org. And it's a decentralized network, fully decentralized, and it has a lot of exciting new features. And we have a new PeerNet browser, which makes it super easy for anybody to use it. So we think of it as the iPhone of the Web3. Like you get the end-to-end from the protocol up to the application layer. We develop everything and make it super easy and bring all of the advantages. And the main advantage is you can share information, you can share files without an intermediary.
So it will look like IPFS or this kind of stuff, or I2P, or which?
Well, so slightly different. So IPFS, for example, doesn't have a decentralized search engine. PeerNet does, which I think is super important. Content discovery is the number one thing. I mean, if you open up Chrome, that's the first thing you see is the search bar. And so when you start the PeerNet browser, the first thing you see is the search bar, and you can search for whatever is on the network. And at the same time, you can publish whatever you want. And the advantage is you don't have to go to YouTube. You don't have to go to Facebook, which who subject you to their terms of service. And so I see this as a huge market gap. And I see also there's so many decentralized projects out there, but they just don't understand like what it really takes for the user adoption side. They may have great tech, but then it's just too difficult, too nerdy, even for subject matter experts to use. And that is really what's hindering the success of decentralized networks right now. So we're going to solve that.
Okay, and it's very funny because you used to work a lot on this kind of networks with Intellix, like you grab all the data on IPFS, for example, on I2P, on Freenet, this kind of stuff. So it was with this experience of grabbing, crawling the data on this kind of, I don't know how we say darknet. I don't know if we can say darknet, but what motivated you to create this kind of stuff?
PeerNet?
Yeah.
So one of the moments that I really saw the need for it was during the Capitol Hill riots earlier this year, when I saw Facebook and Twitter were removing posts in real time, and I absolutely disagreed with that decision of those companies because those videos are historical value. People want to know in 100 years what happened, and they want to see those pictures and videos. What we did as IntelligenceX is we opened up an FTP server for the public, and it got it got so much good attention, and people used it to share all the pictures and videos, and law enforcement used it, and that was a great project. And I noticed at that point that there's something missing, because why is it that we as a Czech company have to open up an FTP server for people to share freely what they want to share? There should be a better way. And so the better way is decentralized peer-to-peer.
And it was pretty useful for the investigations because, for example, Bellingcat, I guess, worked on all this data for the capital, and even we saw a lot, for example, of FBI notice who claim some help about that. But what is it more in? What is an interesting question for me? You grab a lot of data. It can be pastes, it can be videos and everything. How it work, behind how it work on Intellix servers, because you have a lot of different kind of data. I mean, there is a lot of stuff to do in scraping and.
Yeah, great question. So we developed all technology in-house, and we don't use any off-the-shelf like databases such as Elasticsearch or Hadoop or anything similar. So we created our own indexing algorithm and searching algorithm, which makes it possible to collect now more than 4 billion records a month and make them searchable within milliseconds. And that wouldn't be possible if you just use Elasticsearch, and then it would be crazy expensive to try to do that, and you would have to just keep throwing money at it, and it would just increase your problem and solve it. And so when I started, I recognized that it has to be performant. It has to be, you have to split up the problem, divide and conquer. So what we did is we have internally a peer-to-peer system within IntelligenceX where it distributes the data, and it splits up the tasks. And even if there's something is going wrong, then it would just affect like 5% of the system. So as an end user, you probably wouldn't even notice it. But this internal peer-to-peer system helps us to just spin up new servers, extend to additional capacity as needed, and makes it possible that everything runs like completely 100% automated. So we have 0 employees at IntelligenceX. We do rely on some contractors for certain tasks, but we have nobody like constantly checking if everything is running. It just runs. We follow a zero config approach. That means you don't have to set up anything, and it all finds each other. And that also goes then into the new PeerNet project with the peer-to-peer system, where I have a good experience on how to do that, how to write those algorithms, and how to make it scale.
In your opinion, what is the next challenges for a company like Intellix and who want to grab data and to make available some data? Do you think, for example, there will be a big development on side networks like PeerNet or this kind of stuff by the users? Or it will be like a disk space problem? What it will be,
Yeah, right now I don't see it as a disk space problem. So for example, just to give you some numbers, right now we store about 80 billion records. And in terms of data size on disk, that's more than 100 terabytes of data that is all accessible through Intellix I/O. When you store only the important information, you can greatly reduce the size, so you don't have to literally like store the whole internet. And there's some good ways on reducing the data. I do think that companies have to keep track of time and go with time. And so if there's new decentralized networks such as PeerNet and others and IPFS, I do think it is important to add them as data sources, because over time they will become more and more important. And I think that's just, that's the challenge. So you don't stay behind, that you really, you don't take your customers for granted, and you keep evolving and introducing new stuff. I see also a lot of value in AI because it can take off some of the manual labor that people do. It could summarize whatever you're looking at. It can provide you additional context. It could do basically research on its own and provide you things that might be worth taking a look at. So I see a lot of future capabilities in AI.
Okay. And so which people or groups do you recommend to follow in OSINT, in AI, in cybersecurity, in your favorite subjects. I mean,
I don't have any specific names or any specific groups, but I would just say go on Twitter, follow the subjects, follow leaders in this industry, go to conferences or watch them online, read blogs. There's really great information out there to learn. And I would also suggest to anyone who wants to step into OSINT or into cybersecurity, just do it. Just get started. You don't need to go to university to do any of that. And sometimes it might even hinder you because it's a fast industry. It moves really fast. I think within like 2 years, the market completely changes. There's like new players, there's new products, there's new technology. So if you want to start today.
How did you have when you launched Intelix?
When I launched Intelligence X. So, we launched in 2018, October.
Okay.
And I was 27. Yeah.
Okay. And which was the most difficult part to launch a company, this kind of company on this? I mean, on everything, on every project you had, what are the most difficult issues?
Right. Yeah. Well, so the most I would say the most challenging one is that you really stay on track and you believe in yourself, because in the beginning it took us a while to get to product market fit. So it took us 6 months to the first customer, and then it took us about 1.5 years to get to product market fit. And that was because even though we had about like a few billion, between 3 and 4 billion records, we didn't have enough data. So we saw a lot of people that came to Intelligence X, they searched for something, they didn't see anything, they were frustrated, they left, they never came back. But then after 1.5 years, the technology was ready to flip the switch to really crawl anything that makes sense. And then we saw customer retention, both like paid and free users coming back more often. And that was hard in the beginning. It was challenging because I invested hundreds of thousands of euro of my own money that I earned through selling Virus Tracker. And that was a scary moment when 1 year after you launch, you still basically have almost no sales. And you look at it and you already spent or wasted hundreds of thousands, and you look at it and you say, I have to invest another like 50K into this. And making that decision, that is really hard, because then you really start, you sit in a room, you question, was this the biggest mistake of your life, spending all of that money? You could have bought a house or something else. And that was hard, but I stayed on course, and we finished, all the algorithms and the technology, and now, we're a profitable company. We have a lot of paid customers around the world, a lot of free users as well, which we're very happy with. So that was a challenge. The challenge wasn't from the technical side, same with PeerNet. Whatever there's a technical problem, there's a technical solution. We can, fix that. It's much harder than, to gain the customer's trust, to develop something that they really need, to, not just have a solution in search of a problem, but really provide value to the customer. That is really the hard part.
But how did you launch your first company? So Virus Tracker, because I guess you didn't add a lot of money, and so you're beginning from scratch?
Yeah, so the way I launched Virus Tracker was I was working at the bank, and we wanted to know, I was in the malware analysis division, and the question always was, how big are banking Trojans? Where are they active? Are they active in Germany or other geographical areas? Which are the ones we should prioritize? And there wasn't really good data available in the market, so I thought, let's start sinkholing botnets. And because for political reasons, the bank cannot run sinkholes, you would potentially see, data coming from other banks' customers that are being sent to the servers. I was doing it on my own as a new company, and that's how it started, out of this need. And so we started it just monitoring banking Trojans, and then it grew and monitoring any other botnets that we could. And at one point we were sinkholing 50% of all known APTs, including Stuxnet. So we were able to tell who is still infected with Stuxnet, and we got some very interesting data. We got also some very interesting data from observing that there are diplomats who were infected, who traveled with the machines from Switzerland to North Korea and back, and you could tell based on their IP addresses and based on the infection that story. So we got some some really interesting data, including even infected Apple devices, iPhones. And we observed that 99% of those infections came out of China because people jailbreaked their iPhones and then downloaded whatever infected apps they were downloading. So that just really started out of the need to collect it, and then really grew out of it. And then other companies wanted the data as well to identify if they have infections, and especially on a country level, that made a lot of sense, where CERT's Computer Emergency Response Team could take the data and then notify all of the companies and people affected within the country. Yeah, and so that was a very successful product, and sold it to Looking Glass, who was integrating it into their products.
Okay, so for you, your best advice for somebody who want to create an OSINT company, it's just do it. Like read a lot of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. Don't wait around for anybody. Just do it. There's really so many good resources. You can learn it on your own, or there's also online courses. Whatever works best for you. And I would recommend to do something that is fun to you. So if you want to go into hacking or exploitation, or just cybersecurity in general, there's, for example, Crack Me's, like little challenges, or you could go into writing cheats for computer games, because a lot of the techniques are very similar across the spectrum, even for OSINT sometimes. So when you learn it for one thing, when you learn how to crack games and write cheat software for it, you learn basically reverse engineering, and then you can reverse engineer anything else that you want. So I would just start with something that is fun. Otherwise, you wouldn't like it.
And how did you begin the infosec? I mean, cybersecurity, to the people who don't know a lot about cybersecurity, but it was because you begin to play video games like Counter-Strike 1.6, and you begin to cheat on Counter-Strike and to perform some reverse engineering. Or what is your story about hacking?
Well, so I mean, my story is when I was in school, I started already before starting the professional world, like working on some small operating system development, bootloaders, kernel drivers, and all of that stuff. And that really helped me for getting into the antivirus company, because I knew assembly language, so you can do any kind of reverse engineering immediately. And at the antivirus company, that really exposed me to the whole, security world, because as at an antivirus company, collect all the malware samples and from anything, from phishing attacks, Trojans, banking Trojans, rootkits, whatever there exists. So you really, really get a good overview of all of that. And since then, I pretty much stayed a little bit in the security world and kept doing it. And for me, it's very easy having this, strong developer background to support that.
Yeah, and we have the luck in OSINT too to we can do the same thing. I mean, you can learn everything on Twitter, even if you are non-tech people, even if you are not able to code on Python or this kind of stuff. You just need some methodologies and some ideas. So
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And there's just so much out there that you can use, and even if you start to playing around and maybe scripting a little bit, it can, there's so much there. Just do it is my number one answer. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Where can we follow all the updates about Intelix or your project?
The best way is to follow us on Twitter. So our Twitter handle is _IntelligenceX. And my other Twitter account for PeerNet is PeerNetOfficial. Okay.
Thank you very much. Good luck for your next project. I hope you will have a lot of success. And thank you again for your time for this. It's I hope, and I'm sure a lot of people who will listen that will be motivated to create some business, to create some new projects. And thank you a lot, Pedro, for that.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And it was a pleasure to animate this podcast with you. Goodbye.